welcome everybody. I am not on video today, but it's Todd Taylor speaking as Chair of the Police Services Board, and we declare the open session of the Police Services Board open at 5:07. And we are going to start off with section 6.1 under the public session, which is the Orangeville decision regarding the OPP official confirmation dated May 22nd, 2020. So basically, the board has received a letter confirming that Ontario has accepted the invitation for OPP to service Orangeville, and that will be moving forward in October of this year. Is there any input from board members regarding this official confirmation? No? Hearing none, could I please have a motion to receive that document?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Sandy.
Brown?
Could I have a seconder, please? Member Brown?
I'll second, Todd.
Thank you, Member McSweeney. All in favor?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. So fast. And then 6.2 is just a verbal update regarding the OPP transition. We don't have representation from the town on this point, but I did receive a written update from Andrew McKinney from the town. And basically that work is along the lines of the work necessary for the building renovations are going well. The uniform process in terms of transition for officers to new roles is progressing in a positive fashion. I'm just trying to apologize, everyone. I'm trying to make sure that I'm reading through her notes. But I think, fellow board members, that would be the best top line summary that I could give at this time is that the process for transitioning the building that is currently housing the Orangeville Police Service is moving forward, and the HR process of current Orangeville Police Service employees into their next roles is also progressing in a positive fashion. Would any board members have anything further to add to that update, or do you think that I've captured the spirit of what we've discussed?
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's fine, Todd.
Okay, thank you. Could I have a motion to receive that? Actually, we don't need to do that for an OPP transition update, just verbal.
Oh.
Correct, Madam Secretary?
Yep.
Okay.
That's correct.
So, thank you. Item 6.3 is the amended special meeting policy. And if I could call on Vice Chair McSweeney to speak to this item 6.3.
Sure. Members will recall that at our last meeting, we looked at a revised version of our special policy on this subject to deal with special meeting claims and assigned work claims, and decided, based on the comments of a number of members, to make some further changes. So I went away and did that further drafting and circulated the revised policy on May 20th, and then again a couple of additional tweaks on May 21st by email to members. It's in your, I think it came around, I sent it separately. It's under item 6.3. So if members can just have a look at the revised track change policy, I'll just quickly review the changes and then we can consider it for approval. So the first change in response to some comments from members was in section 2, and that is a change to the sentence which reads, assigned work may be approved retroactively by the board after it is performed, and I added in whole or in part. So this is a case where the board may not have formally approved the assigned work, but recognize that it's legitimate work it wants done and it wants to approve claims for. And at the point of time it's approving that work, Some of it may have already been done in whole or in part. So just a further clarification by adding those words in whole or in part. And then over at section 9, there was a discussion about the frequency of submitting the board secretary submitting to the board the report, which keeps a running total of claims for special meetings and approved work assignments. Originally, the form of this report, which is now attached to the policy, was a semi-annual form, and I think there was some discussion that the board would probably want to receive it more frequently than that. So what I did was I set it up as a quarterly report, but then added an additional sentence that reads, upon direction from the board secretary shall prepare and submit this report on a more frequent basis. So basically, maximum flexibility, we'll get it at least quarterly, but if the board wants to receive it more frequently than that, then we just give direction. Secretary is done. The third change in response to a comment I think raised by Member Craker was on the method by which this policy can be amended or changed. And so I added an additional section, section 11, which makes it clear that the policy can be amended from time to time by the board. So we would do it the way the board decides any issue, either by unanimous written resolution or at a properly called meeting through a quorum vote. The final little nit and pick, if you turn to the attached report, the track change was that I've just assigned a year to the report, so 2020, 2021, whatever. And then depending upon the direction that the secretary has received from the board on the frequency, then that frequency period can be filled in.
Right.
So this way, if at any time anyone wants to see a running tally of the claims and what their status is, you just call for this report and it will tell us.
Okay, that's great. Is there any questions for Member McSweeney on item 6.3?
Could he come over and help me sort my closet?
I thought you were asking to do your taxes.
Yeah, you can help me there too. No question. Yeah.
Social distancing style.
Well done, Ian, as usual. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well done.
So this is an approval.
It's exceptional.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any other comments from any of the board members? No? Okay, hearing none. Could I have a motion to receive item 6.3 as described by Member McSweeney?
Receive and approve.
Okay.
Would we receive and approve it, Todd?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So Member Rose, I heard, and I'm sorry,
yes.
I missed the seconder.
And Brown will second it.
And Member Brown. Thank you to you both. And all in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So that motion is passed unanimously. Thank you, everyone.
So, Mr. Chair, just one follow-up point. If we could ask the secretary to accept the changes, remove the watermark, and place it on board letterhead, then it will be final.
Okay, we'll do that.
And is that, could you send that out post, Terry?
Yes.
Yes,
I
will.
I think the board members should receive a copy of that final policy on letterhead.
Will we also be posting it with our bylaws on the website for the public? Should the public want to take a look at it?
Yep, it should be posted as well. It's part of our policies.
Yeah,
okay.
Agreed. Okay. So item 6.4 then, the records retention bylaw. Could I call on Member McSweeney to speak to that as well?
Sure. So I think this is going to be a bit of a live item, and we touched briefly on it last day. The records retention, currently there's the record retention bylaw. It was established in February of 2018. So the good news is we're dealing with a pretty recent document, and it's pretty good. So this records retention bylaw, it was established under Section 254 of the Municipal Act, and Section 255 of that Act exempts these kinds of records from municipal jurisdiction. So the board pretty much has to establish a policy, a records retention and destruction policy, and that is a requirement that's recognized under the Police Services Act as well. So I started looking at this, and it's actually a pretty short bylaw, but the guts of it really is a schedule that's attached that goes through various kinds of documents, and then in chart form describes the document, names the document, describes the document, and then discusses the kind of retention requirements that are built around that document. So, I mean, I think going forward, what we have to be aware of and be thinking about is what changes are required in addition to enforcing and implementing this bylaw. I think we need to think about what changes need to be made by way of an update. I have a number of little minor fiddly changes that I'll get to in a second, but probably a more substantive review is going to be required as we move forward and deal with the changes that we are going to be dealing with as a board in terms of our governance and structure. So maybe hold on to that and wait for that to happen. We'll be better informed about what those changes should be. As a result of the OPP transition, also, there may be some suggested changes that we want to make as a result of the PSB box review that's currently underway by the Secretary. And also, there may be changes that we want to make as a result of the coming into force of the new Police Services Act and the regulations. I mean, all of that, pretty significant changes coming down the pipe. So unless we see something that's crying out for change now, I think, other than tidy up changes, I think we'll simply maintain the status quo, implement the current policy, and just be keeping a bit of a list on changes that we might want to make. So there are a couple of issues though that I just wanted to open up for members of the board. Just to remind ourselves that there are two sets of records here. We're talking about records that are kept that are board records, right? Our minutes, our whatever that, all of the records that are produced by operation of the Police Services Board. But there are also a second set of records, which are the Police Services records themselves. And I think the way this bylaw is worded, I think it's intended to apply to both those kinds of records. So we are, I think, the custodian of both of those things, and this bylaw has to be administered to cover both of those things. So I think we need to look at and clarify, unless it's clear under the policy, who is responsible for the retention and destruction of both our records and the OPS records, not only now, but after the OPP transition, right? So, I mean, the OPP don't want them, but they've got to be maintained and they've got to be dealt with. So I think we don't have to do it today, but I think we need to get to wrap our arms around that issue and decide what to do. So that might be enough for today. As I said, the bylaw is pretty short. There are a couple of things in it that I just noted as being a little odd. The responsibility for client for compliance section C talks about any member of the service who is assigned the custody. So that, I don't know what member of the service. To me, that sounds like it's talking about a police officer. And I don't think it's necessarily intended or expected that a police officer be responsible for maintaining and administering this policy. So we might want to build in some flexibility through an amendment to that provision. And as far as the disposal of records go, it talks about the executive assistant. I think that probably means the executive assistant of the Police Services Board, although that's not a defined term. So there are a couple of little nits and picks like that I'd like to get clarification on. But really the meat of the issue is, if you look at the definitions, what is a record? Are we satisfied that everything that's described in there as a record is being properly tracked and maintained under the schedule? And the retention periods, are we satisfied that the assigned retention periods are, as produced under the schedule, are satisfactory? So those are open-ended questions. I'm happy to give further consideration to all of that and to report at a subsequent meeting, but I just wanted to socialize the bylaw at this point, so members were aware of it and some of the initial threshold issues that I'd discovered.
I'd like to speak for a moment once you're done there.
Yep, I'm done. I'm done.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, Member Brown, why don't you go first then?
We're in the digital world now, and I don't think I saw anything in there that stated that all records should be digitized, but I presume they will be, or they are being. And if so, where would those digital records be? We're not part of the Orangeville Police Service. We're not part of the OPP. We're not part of the town of Orangeville. We're an independent body. And are we going to have cloud storage, for instance, that may, survive any member of this board? And is that the best residence for this information, is something in the cloud rather than on somebody's laptop? And I just wanted to throw that out for consideration. And also the records that Vice Chair McSweeney mentioned coming out of the police service, there must be privacy and security issues there. So just wondering who and how that is handled, because those records I'm sure a lot of them are sealed for privacy reasons. So I just wanted to, ask that question about how we were going to handle those records.
Yes. So thank you, Member Brown. Again, from our board, we are working on a project with Carrie and with the town in terms of putting the board information on. But you're both bringing up an entirely different issue that I think we're going to have to spend some time on. To Member McSweeney's point, Chief, would you have any thoughts on this based on your experience?
The records will have to be stored in such a way that they maintain the privacy, but also the availability should we need to get at it. I know that there are other services that have utilized companies specific for that role, and it is my recommendation to seek some advice from the transition team that I'm sure has already talked about this.
I think it's McSweeney. I think that's good advice, and I don't want to stop the other members from weighing in. But I do have some comments on Member Brown's comments, but I'll hold until we hear from the other members.
I agree with Sandy about if we do move towards digitally, but my concern is about for security. We have to make sure that the cloud is secure and it's not open to cyber attacks. And how we get around that in privacy.
Right.
Okay, I've made a note as a follow-up as chair. I'll follow up with our transition team, Mr. Brennan and Ms. McKinney, and gain their input as well. And I guess Terry, we'll have to bring that back to the board in our next meeting, and because this is going to be top of mind for sure.
Okay. So, Mr. Chair, the just one or two comments on what Member Brown raised, I agree with. So fortunately, the current bylaw in its description of what a record is does talk about and recognize the privacy issue. I mean, it's odd to me that these are not under municipal jurisdiction, but that the records are talked about as being subject to the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection and Privacy Act. I'm not going to make a big thing of it, but it is definitely subject to some privacy legislation, and we need to remember that when we're both retaining it and destroying it, because we may get requests under that privacy legislation for disclosure. We'll have to be able to show that if we don't have it, that we disposed of it in a way that we're allowed to under our bylaw. The second thing I wanted to point out is, fortunately, again, in the description of record, it does talk about records in electronic form as well. So I would take that as being we are able to take a hard copy record and convert it into electronic form, and that would be adequate storage, at an adequate form for storage purposes. But the other thing is, hard copy storage is expensive and bulky. Electronic storage is easy. You can store a lot in the cloud. But I don't think that the capacity to store things forever, I don't think that really informs what we should be doing on the destruction end. I think we need to have the discipline to destroy documents in accordance with our policy as they mature.
Okay.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay. Any further comments to that?
We are not. I don't know who raised the point, but we are not inventing this wheel. So somebody out there has got to have done this before.
Yeah. Chief mentioned there's third parties that do this type of work, so we need to source that.
But other municipalities have gone from their local police force to the OPP. I wonder if, Mr. Chair, we should be reaching out to one or more of them to find out how they handle it. We might find that they say, "Oh my God, we haven't done anything," but I think it's a question worth asking.
Yeah, I can't imagine that they wouldn't have done anything. It's such an important piece. So I jotted down here as my list of follow-ups again is to follow up with the transition team. Unless the board feels that it's urgent, to me, I would just ensure that this is on our agenda for our next meeting. And potentially we'd have a little bit of a working session about it.
Sure.
Unless you think we need to meet before then. And our next meeting is scheduled for July 21st. But I think that's still responsible.
Right. Sounds good to me.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I don't think that needs to be a motion. I'll certainly have that. We'll bring it forward for the next meeting. I think it's more about a receive at this point, unless people feel differently.
No.
For 6-4.
I'll make a motion to receive that.
Okay.
Member Brown.
Member Brown. Could I have a seconder to receive 6-4? Thank you, Member Rose. All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. And myself as well. So that's unanimous. Thank you, everyone. So that brings us to 6-5, which is, 6-5, which is an update on, kind of dovetails nicely with what we were just talking about. So we have the police records being transferred over, the Police Services Board records being transferred over to an electronic database with the town. And Carrie is leading that on our behalf, and she's just going to give a quick update on how that's progressing.
So I've met with Miss Landry the beginning of June, and we discussed how we were going to move forward with this. And I'm about halfway through, so I was given 15 boxes. I've completed about 8.
Wow.
I was just advised by Sergeant White yesterday that he has an additional 2 more boxes at the station. So I will be picking those up within the next day or 2. And as I complete the boxes, I am to take them to Miss Landry, and she's holding them right now. And then she advised me that then they will go by their retention, the town's retention bylaw.
Okay.
So I don't know.
Sorry, I just want to stop there. I don't think that can happen.
Okay,
I mean,
that's what I'm going to ask now.
Yeah, based on our bylaw, the town has no jurisdiction over those records.
Right.
What is your suggestion then, Member McSweeney, about where they would go?
I'm at a loss for words. Here's my suggestion. We can deputize the town on our behalf to hold them. That's fine. But they're not holding them under their retention policy. They're holding them under ours.
Right. Is there any need to digitize those records, or are we just holding them till they expire?
My understanding, sorry.
Go ahead. I think they should be digitized.
I think they should be. However, when I had my discussion with Miss Landry, we were just keeping them as is, going through, organizing, labeling each box, the retention period, what was in each box, and then literally just sitting with the boxes until we have a concrete bylaw for the retention.
Yeah, so
my understanding was the same, and that is that we would do this organization. The boxes would be stored at Town Hall, and then we as I guess town council has worked with town staff to hire someone to eventually digitize all town records, and that would be part of this process.
Right. So once again, I think I'm not averse. I don't think the board should be averse to that. We just need to make sure that what is going on is that we are deputizing the town to hold these records and perhaps other OPS records on our behalf, pending further direction. And while they're holding them under our records retention bylaw, not theirs. And if they're being digitized, they're being digitized at our direction. I think it's probably a distinction without much of a procedural difference, but I think it's important to maintain that jurisdictional divide.
Yep.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Member McSweeney. I will follow up with the town and ensure that I fully understand the process and report back to the board. So that's my 4th follow-up from this meeting.
Okay, and
we'll
Mr. Chair,
add that to
if you want my assistance, just let me know.
You know, it might be a good idea to just have a half-hour touch base with Karen Landry.
Yep.
And make sure, and perhaps Andrea McKinney, and make sure we're grasping this and just covering all our bases. So I'll set something up.
Great.
Okay. So that is very good. So, Carrie, anything further on that? Oh, I'm sorry. Any questions for Carrie on that? I have one, and that is, I'm just curious, Carrie, we talked about a time frame and how long you'd be working on it. How long is a box taking you on average?
On average, 1 to 2 hours. Some are very organized, I have to say, and some are not so much, so it just depends.
So 1 to 2 hours, and my memory's failing me, but fellow board members, we actually approved an hourly stipend. Well, not the hourly amount, the amount of hours we thought it would be. Does anybody recall top end what that was?
40, wasn't it?
The 40?
Yeah.
I think so.
Okay, perfect. So based on that, we should still be within that range.
So that was $25 an hour. I thought we also put a cap of $1,000 subject to, before reviewing it, Carrie would come back to us once there was $1,000 spent.
That was my understanding.
I don't believe I'm actually going to, I'm not sure, but I don't believe I'm going to make that threshold. So, like I said, I'm done half of them now, almost half of them, and it's not even half of $1,000. So
Right, by your invoice, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, any further comments on this? Yes, go ahead, please.
Chair Taylor, I just had a chat message from Nandini. Nandini, sorry, can you just weigh in here? I'm sorry, you wanted to look at financials? You go ahead.
No, I was just wondering, through the chair to the board, if you want to move up financials, because it's number 9 on the agenda. Before you go into closed session, I'm just wondering if that would be possible.
We've already done our closed session, Nandini.
Okay, alrighty. Yeah. I apologize then. Yeah. I apologize.
But out of respect for you, Nandini, we certainly could move that up if it pleases the board. But let's just finish this one off first, and then we'll come to the financial piece. So so based on that, everyone will be within the threshold that we had set up as a team. So I don't think there's any need to extend that further at this point. And maybe, Carrie, what we could do is just add that on the agenda item as well for next meeting as a further touch base.
Okay.
Okay. So that's great. So that, to me, can we have a motion to receive item 6.5, which was the verbal update by Carrie?
So moved.
Thank you, Mary.
Seconded,
And
Brown.
Thank you, Member Brown. All in favor?
Yes.
That's great. Okay. Would board members be adverse to moving at this point to the financials so that we could release Nandini for the evening?
Sure. So that's 9.1.
Fine. Yeah.
No problem.
Okay. So why don't we do that? We'll move out of order, and on the agenda we'll move to item 9, which is accounts and financial statements, and item 9.1. So has everyone had a chance to review the document? And if so, are there any questions for Nandini? Or Nandini, is there anything that you would like to share with the board?
So like you said, I will take any question from the board, but overall we are trending on a positive note. I would ask the board to look at the bottom of the document. We are looking at a favorable variance of close to 800,000, which means we're currently under budget, 19% of that, and majority of that variance is coming from wage gap measures, more specifically from uniform officers and communication section of the budget. So like I said, if board has any specific question, I'm more than happy to answer, but that's kind of the highlight from the May 31st financials.
I have a couple of questions, if I may.
Yes, please.
Okay. I'm presuming, obviously, that we're not quite half the way through the year, and this is going to go right through to December. How do we account for the changeover in October, November, and December? Does this budget carry through?
Through the chair to the board member, yes, that's correct. We did in 2019. When we were budgeting for 2020, we did budget for the entire year. Municipal budget does not allow for budgeting 2/3 of the year. So yes, the budget will carry through till the end of the year.
That was question one. My second question was, I noticed that none of this was budgeted for because nobody knew it was coming, but the COVID expenses as of now are around $36,000. And I'm wondering, is there any recourse from any source, any federal, provincial source to help us with that kind of money that we've expended, which we weren't expecting?
Okay. So, given that the police budget is trending in a favorable variance, so we should be more than likely recoup whatever COVID-related expenses that are coming our way. In terms of whether there are relief coming from the federal and provincial government, more specifically to COVID-related expenses, I am not in a position to answer that right now. We continue to, and when I say we, I mean municipal staff, more specifically finance, we continue to monitor all correspondences that are coming out of the federal and provincial. I think the first phase of relief that are coming out in terms of monetary relief are probably more toward local businesses, residents that are facing challenges with COVID-19. What I would suggest to the members of this board is that we stay tuned for the next iteration of provincial and federal budget. And I think as we gear up toward those budgets, we will learn more.
And my final question, if I may, I noticed that most of the vehicles have had to have the COVID-19 assessments done and the whatever they're doing with them at that point. I just wanted to ask the chief, is vehicle 4903, is that not in use? Because nothing was budgeted and there's no record of anything being done with COVID.
I actually don't know which vehicle you're referring to, but we have decommissioned a vehicle as it relates to our community services, and we're not using that vehicle anymore, and that vehicle has actually expired.
Okay, so that was the Ford Explorer then, I think.
No.
Right.
All our line
Looks like a Chevy.
Yes, Chev.
Okay, sorry, I don't know my cars. I could tell you the color of them maybe. But and then finally, the last question was, I noticed that all of the cars that did have money budgeted for them in the approved budget, when they were sent for whatever maintenance they needed, nearly all of them come back a much higher cost than we anticipated.
Yeah, so we haven't been in a position to purchase new vehicles for the last 2 years, and as a result of our disbandment in October, we're doing what we can to keep our vehicles on the road, and unfortunately, the maintenance costs reflect that.
Thanks very much, Chief.
You're welcome.
That's it.
Is there any further questions regarding the financials? I just had one, if I may, and it's for the chief and the deputy, and the mention of the savings with the officers and the communications department. I'm just wondering if you could speak to how you're managing that with the, I assume we're down on staff, so how is that going within the department?
We are down on some staff members, and I see that trend continuing. And as a result of not hiring, we have some gaps. So we are filling our front line. There is no swaying on that, but because of some vacancies that aren't being filled, we are not spending that dollar.
Okay. Great. Thank you, Chief. Anything further, fellow board members?
Thank you.
Hearing none, could I have a motion to receive the financials, please?
I'll move. Oh, sorry.
Member Rose, and sorry,
Ken.
is that you, Ken? Yeah. Thank you. All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for that. Nandini, thank you so much for joining us. You're welcome to stay, obviously, but understand if you'd like to enjoy your evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nadine.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nandini.
Okay, so everyone, that we're going to move back then to item 6.7, which is there was some questions regarding when the next meetings were. And
Hold on.
I have.
You got a website yet, Mr.
Yeah,
Chair?
we should be on
Oh,
6.6.
I'm sorry. I'm so excited here to move on. So I thank you, Member Brown. Item 6.6 is the website, and I guess we're back to you, Carrie.
Thank you. So basically, I have been in touch with Andrea McKinney as recommended by Mayor Brown. And unfortunately, our schedules have not lined up. We've tried a few times, and we are hopeful that within the next week, we'll be able to set up another time to discuss. But as of an update, I don't have an update for you right now, but she was more than willing to discuss and also include, I believe, Jason in our IT department and a few others. So it is in the works. Just we haven't had a time to connect, but we will be in the near future. So I can put that on the agenda for next month, if that's appropriate.
Okay.
Great.
Yep, that'd be great. Do you need any help from the board on that, Carrie, or is it? Do you feel
I
like
don't. It's just a matter of us connecting and speaking with Andrea and seeing what the town's doing, and hopefully we can come back with some answers for the board to make some decisions with regards to what they would like see happen with the website going forward.
All right. Thank you for that. I don't think there's any need to receive or vote on that then. So we will move on to item 6.7, which I was excited to share earlier. And board members, what I have here is posted in our notes, but our next meeting would be July 21st. Just without reading through this list, does everyone have July 21st at 4 p.m. in their calendars, or do we need to do a calendar update for everyone with these remaining dates? And I'm happy to do that if we need to. I just want to make sure. So we've got July 21st, August 18th. The list goes on. Do you have records of that?
I've got July the 21st in my calendar, and it's not the same as on our agenda. The agenda says the 14th.
I don't have anything in my calendar. Carrie, did you send out invitations for each of these yet?
I have
Just
not.
waiting for this to be approved, I guess, and then
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I wasn't sure if we were sitting in the summer. I know some boards do, some don't. So I was waiting to hear from the board as to what dates are confirmed, and then I will send out the invitations.
Okay. May I ask, Member Rose, you had mentioned the 14th. You have July 14th down in there?
It's just on the agenda package where it says adjournment, confirm the date and time. It's got Tuesday, July the 14th, and I think it should be the 21st.
I have all these dates in my calendar, but I manually input them at the beginning of the year, Todd, when we approve them.
Yeah. Oh, I see what you're referring to, Mary. Oh, thank you for pointing that out. Oh,
but
how interesting.
Isn't it the second Tuesday of every month?
Third Tuesday?
That's what I have, July 21st.
Okay. So it's the correct website then.
Yeah. If we do decide to meet in the summer.
Well, we have issues. I think we should be meeting myself, but
Yeah.
Yes.
So, Mr. Chair, all of these dates are in my calendar, and so they all work for me.
So everyone, these dates are in my calendar and work for me as well. The July 21st date, personally, I think we've got a few things going on with a deadline date coming up for disbandment that it would make sense that we do, even if it's a truncated meeting.
yeah.
I think it would make sense that we got together.
Absolutely.
I'll make a motion to approve all of these dates.
Okay. So there's
Seconded.
a motion on the floor from Member Brown.
And McSweeney seconds. McSweeney?
Oh, excuse me. McSweeney is seconded. All in favor of that?
Yes.
Yep.
Wonderful. Okay. So that puts us on to item 6.8. And our community had a wonderful celebration, an event on Sunday, this past Sunday, which was the Black Lives Matter event. I attended with my family. I guess what we've decided as a board is we would speak to it ever so lightly, but I think our agreement was is we would defer this to our mayor to speak to. And so, Member Brown, I'll turn the reins over to you for item 6.8.
Yeah, well, those who were in attendance, I think the right people spoke. I think the experience and reality of those people that spoke, they spoke the truth of how they feel. There's still some, systemic racism that's going on, outside of the, the Black Lives Matter seems to be pointing towards police, but things like housing discrimination, employment discrimination, we need to be cognizant of those issues and try and protect people in those areas as well. My thoughts here is that during the little town hall that we hosted with Chief Kalinsky and Sergeant Jason Foles from OPP and Phil Dewar and Simran Bamboo, I thought it was a good meeting. There were some questions asked of the police force, both police forces, with respect to neck restraint, which was brought forward because of the George Floyd incident. And, both police forces indicated that type of restraint was not part of training in Ontario. So that was very good to hear. At the end of our meeting, Mr. Dewar asked the Chief Kalinsky regarding the demographic makeup of our police force, and the chief responded that there's not a lineup of people coming, and it's whenever he needs people, he puts the notices out and gets applications, and it would be nice to have a little more color on our police force, but he wasn't able to necessarily make that happen to match up with the demographic in Orangeville. So my thoughts were, OPP's got a larger HR department, a larger net for hiring. They have officers of the South Asian community, Black community currently, and would it be advisable for our police service board to send a letter to them that they consider, when they populate our detachment here, that they consider some people of color in their choice for members of the local police detachment. So that's all I wanted to say. I'd love to have other people talk about this, and I think it's a good thought that Mr. Dewar brought up in our meeting, and I think it makes sense because he mentioned that certain communities have cultural issues, and the uniform is something that not everybody is comfortable with, and if it's somebody of their own culture, they might feel better. So I think we need to explore this, and I wanted to bring it to the Police Services Board to discuss. So I'll turn it over to you, Chair Taylor.
Thank you, Member Brown. I do have some questions for you, but I wonder, Chief Kalinsky, I hate to put you on the spot, and I understand if you didn't want to speak to this, but did you have any thoughts on what Member Brown was sharing?
Yes, he summed it up correctly. We've had our challenges to recruit from the diverse background here in Orangeville. It's something that we're always conscious of, something that we always talk about, something that we always encourage, but the lack of interest has been noticeable.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Deputy Chief Guilfoyle, did you want to speak at all to that, or?
I think that. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that any police force should be representative of the population that it serves. and it was our intention to try to bring the Orangeville Police Service to be a more diverse and inclusive police service, but we've kind of run out of time. So we will encourage the OPP to promote a more diverse police service, and I look forward to working in the future with them to encourage that to happen here.
If I may.
Thank you, Chief. Yes, Member Rose, please.
I've agreed with everything that I've heard so far, and I think you'll find that if you look at any of the other boards or committees or whatever, not just in the town, I'm also on Family Transition Place, we're looking at exactly the same thing. We're looking at having a diverse group of people on that board, and I'm sure every board and commission and or committee would probably need to look at what they are experiencing, and I think this is very widespread. It's not just in policing, and I think this is going to be a time to take matters into hand and trying to look at some of the issues. And I agree that march the other day was amazing. I wasn't able to join in, but I did watch it on my computer, and I thought it was just wonderful to see the diversity of people that were there, the age group differences. It was an amazing group.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you, Member Rose. I have two comments, if I may. One is a question to you, Mayor Brown, and maybe it's self-serving, but you and I are in the same group. So again, feel free to not answer if you think I'm offside. Mm-hmm. But council was criticized post that event, and why council was criticized is it was deemed that we didn't support it by not offering verbal affirmation during the day of what our thoughts were and whatnot. My thinking, candidly, is that it wasn't my place to do so. I didn't think it was the place of the mayor to do so. I thought that we as a council handled that correctly, and that is that we participated and we were quiet because it wasn't our place. But everyone would know that I personally support diversity and inclusion, and I guess that's my thoughts. I'm curious if you share the same view or yeah. Thought maybe we didn't handle it right.
No, I think 100%. This was a grassroots movement, a family, a multiracial family whose children had been affected by racism in this town are the ones that started this. I liked. It was a bit of a softer kind of meeting than those that we've seen in the United States, where it became black on blue, and I'm glad that did not come out here. And I don't, Chief Kalinsky and Deputy Chief Guilfoy, the Black Lives Matter movement in the United States seems to be more critical of the police, and I'm glad it didn't go there here. Because I don't believe that's our reality here at all. So want to thank you for, I think, handling racial issues in this town very well. But I think as I said, it was a grassroots decision to organize this. I think the people that spoke their reality, as I said earlier, and frankly, I don't know that a 61-year-old white man is going to add anything to what they say other than trying to horn in on some publicity. And that was really the reason that I didn't see any point of somebody like myself speaking to that. I'm fully supportive. I had a little T-shirt printed up. It was my own little sign. It said, "I'm here to listen and learn," which I did. And those of us who are in some position of authority now have an opportunity to help change the dynamic there. And I think things like Orangeville's Diversity and Inclusion Committee, which we agreed to start up in 2019 and is just about to get started as soon as we can with the COVID. I know the town of Shelburne has brought forward a motion to start up a Diversity and Inclusion Committee. Things like what I'm suggesting today, a note to OPP to consider a more diverse makeup of officers in our detachment here in the future. Those are things that we can do as leaders, and we need to continue to support, as I mentioned earlier, housing discrimination and employment discrimination are happening right now, and we need to help people that are affected by that. So, yeah, that's the reason I didn't feel I needed to speak, and frankly, I wasn't officially asked to speak as it was anyway, and I would have turned them down. So, I think who they brought was perfect for the meeting.
So I, again, speaking as a council person, I would completely align with that. I was not asked to speak. I was asked to attend, which I was delighted to do so, and I'm certainly supportive of it, and I appreciate your comments. I'll call you Mayor Brown for the purpose of this discussion. To me, I would like to, it sounds like you're trying to make a motion. You haven't actually said it, Member Brown, but that is, maybe I'll just assume that you did, and I'd like to second your motion that the board work on a letter from the board to the OPP asking that when they take over, when they implement the OPP in our town, that they do their best to ask for diverse backgrounds and whatnot, and certainly will word the letter in a more articulate way.
Mm-hmm.
But my suggestion is that myself and Carrie and whomever else on the board wants to work on this letter, we put it together and we share it in our July meeting and approve it and have it sent to the OPP.
Mr. Chair, I don't propose to draft the letter on this call, but I'm just so we don't lose the thought. I think that Member Brown's suggestion would be infinitely strengthened if the tone of the letter were more that we would like to discuss with the OPP as a priority item, improving the diversity of the force assigned to the Orangeville area to reflect local demographics.
That's great.
And I don't know at what point we want to maybe invite somebody from the OPP to come into one of our meetings, but you know, whether it's the July or August meeting, it might be a time to start, you know, dialoguing with them directly with the board.
Agreed. So I'll have that as a follow-up too. And I think the August one might make sense, fellow board members, and that is because I think we're going to be through some of the projects that we're working on that are OPS priorities, and we might be able to start to turn the page a little bit. So my suggestion, I guess, I'm trying to second, I'm dovetailing, I don't want to take credit for your motion, Member Brown, but basically what you're stating is that we would have a letter from the board to the OPP asking for diverse backgrounds, and then Member McSweeney made a friendly amendment and basically asking that it be a priority item. And my suggestion is that Carrie, myself, and whomever else on the board would like to join in, write this letter, and we have it available for approval at the next board meeting.
Yep. Good. Okay. I like that.
Yeah. Would the rest of the group be in favor with such a thing, or is there further discussion? No further discussion. So I think we're ready to vote. Could I call for a vote, please? All in favor?
I'm in favor. Yes.
Yes.
And I just didn't hear Mary.
Yes.
Yes. Wonderful. That's great. So
and
I have that
Mr. Chair,
as a follow-up.
I'm happy to participate in that drafting exercise as well.
That's great. That's great. Appreciate that. And I'd like to take a swat at it myself too. So okay, so that is 6.8, which means we would be on to item 7, and item 7 is to pass any motions developed in closed session. And I don't believe that there was any motions that require that for open session. Madam Secretary, am I correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So we're on to item 8, and if it pleases the board, I would like to defer item 8.1 and 8.2 for this meeting. We will move those 2 items to our July meeting.
I'll second that, Todd.
Thank you, McCracken. All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you very much. That moves us on to item 9, which is the accounts and financial statements, and 9.1, which we have covered off, and Nandini was kind enough to join us. And so that brings us to item 9.2, which is the invoice for our membership for 2020. Carrie, are you going to speak to this, or?
Sure, I can speak to that, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
Basically, it's just the invoice for the membership dues for the year 2020. I would like it to be, well, I just wanted to send it to the board and have it approved so that we can send it in for payment.
Wonderful. Could I have a motion to approve that expense?
Brown, yes.
Yeah,
Seconded.
Seconded, please. Thank you, Member Rose. All in favor?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you, everyone. So 9.3, and this is a follow-up from what we talked about earlier, which is our new process for approving any outside work within the board. And there has been, I guess, receipts submitted by myself and Member McSweeney in particular. I think that's the majority of it, but could I guess, any questions on 9.3, and then could I have a motion to approve those expenses?
I'll make the motion to approve that.
I have no,
Okay.
Yep, I have no problem. Just got a question, Todd. What's an alignment meeting? I'm just curious. I see it a couple times. What's an alignment meeting?
That's probably my, and absolutely appreciate the question. That is my way of saying we're having a pre-meeting with, and I think the protagonists were all listed there, and in my mind that would be Andrew McKinney, Ed Brennan, Jennifer Gone, our legal representation, Member McSweeney, and myself, and we were discussing our strategy for the negotiation process prior to meeting with the association.
Okay, I just brought that question because you guys met with Carrie on the 13th of June. So is that to talk about this meeting, the pre-meeting before the meeting?
So the reason for the pre-meeting prior to a meeting is Carrie is brand new, and we're trying to make sure that we have the agenda items set up, and we're organized prior to going forth. And being fair to her, she hasn't gone through the process. So I think that those meetings will go away as Carrie's experience grows, and she'll just intuitively know. But for now, I think they've been a good addition. Like it's been a struggle. Not any reflection on the wonderful Carrie. It's just been a struggle as we try and get these meetings together. So it felt like if we have these pre-meetings where we're making sure we all understand what that agenda item is and what that paperwork is required, that this meeting runs in a smoother fashion. There isn't anything content-wise that's being shared that wouldn't be shared with the board. It's just, is the story that we're trying to share, does it make sense? Is everything in order? Is the purpose of that.
Okay, thank you.
So, Mr. Chair, it's Ian. I just wanted to say a couple of things just to remind members about the policy and these claims. So, members, under the policy, the convention is that if the claim that's to be submitted relates to participation at a special meeting, the secretary is going to prepare that claim form, populate it with the right words, and then send it out to members for their signature, and then submit it in due course to the board. For the assigned work, that's the responsibility of each individual member participating in that assigned work to fill out the claim form, populate it with the right words, sign it, and send it in to Carrie. Because we're all new at this, I just it's a plea for some standardization. The claim form itself is fairly standardized, but I would just like to remind members of two things. First of all, when you're describing the work you're doing, and if it involves meeting with others, to at least identify those others by their initials so that it provides some helpful context for anyone reading it. And the second thing is to be careful that there are two kinds of payments that those claims relate to. One is the $100, which is for the per diem, but the other is for expenses. So if you're filling it out claiming only the $100, don't also claim $100 in expenses. It's not an expense. Expenses are, out of pockets that you're being reimbursed for.
Right.
Yeah, mileage.
We'll eventually get it right. I think it's pretty clear what is meant, but just, for future times when we're filling out those claim forms, I just wanted to provide that context.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Member McSweeney. So is there any other questions regarding 9.3 and any of the content in 9.3? If not, we have a motion to receive on the floor by Member Brown, and I don't think I got a seconder.
I'll second it. Should we receive and approve?
Great. Thank you for that. All in favor?
Yes.
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 Thank you. Okay, so that we're going to move on to item 9.4, which is the credit card status update, verbal update by Carrie.
Mr. Chair, I just had a thought going back to this report. In addition, I'm just wondering if in addition to the policy itself being posted for public viewing, I think it might be helpful if the report were also published for public viewing so the public could see on a running basis the kinds of special expenses that were being submitted. I don't want to trouble them with the actual claim forms, but the report is a helpful little summary of who's doing what and who's submitting claims for that work.
And what would that, just an Excel spreadsheet kind of thing, like an additional piece of information?
No, just the report itself.
I see. Okay.
The quarterly report, Ian.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, the quarterly report. And we could do it quarterly. Like, we don't have to do it. I mean, I appreciate it's a bit of a live document, so maybe update it on the public posting every quarter.
Yep. After it's approved.
Yeah.
Again, if there's public money being spent, I think we all agree we want as much transparency as possible. So
Great.
Okay. So, Member McSweeney, do you require that as an add-on, or?
I think it might be helpful to let's do it by motion, yeah, and then just instruct Carrie that when she's posting, after she posts the final version of the special meeting policy, she can also post the quarterly report each quarter. So that's the motion.
Would that not just be part of the minutes of that meeting? And would it not be then published as a result of that?
Yes, I guess I'm just trying to elevate the profile of it.
Okay, fair enough. Do you want to make that motion, Ian? I'll second it.
Yes, I make that motion.
Okay.
Okay. All in favor?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So that's approved unanimously. That's great. So we move on with swiftness to item 10, which is the question period.
9-4.
Oh,
Chair Taylor, sorry.
I'm really excited tonight to push this along, it appears. My apologies. So, okay. So, Carrie, the credit card report. I tried to call that up earlier, and then Member McSweeney threw me off here.
Right. I did.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
Mr. Chair, just to touch on that, I did receive an email from Katie Lynn from the town, and she was just requiring some additional information from myself to put in the application. I have not since heard back, so I'm just awaiting confirmation from her.
Okay. Do you require any assistance, or do you think you're good?
I think I'm good.
Okay. Okay. Very good. All right, so I don't think there's anything to, well, I asked the question because sometimes intervention helps, right?
9.5, I'll make a motion to approve Carrie's invoice.
So moved. Seconded.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So we're at question period. Dan, is there anyone on the line that would like to ask a question?
Through you, Mr. Chair, no, there's currently nobody on the line.
Okay. Thank you.
What if there's somebody on that we lost?
Through the chair again, nobody was on the line at any point during the meeting.
There was, those are members, I think, Member McSweeney.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay. So that brings us on to presentations. There's no presentations. And then number 12 is delegations. We have no delegations. 13, correspondence, no correspondence. And so 14. So 14.1, I'd like to turn it over to Chief Kalinsky, please.
Thank you. I'm going to be speaking about a withdrawal of complaint from an individual to the Office of the Independent Review Director. And originally, the complaint was made against one of our officers for a perceived lack of impartiality, when in fact the officer was following procedure. The deputy chief engaged in this particular complaint, resolved the issues, and the complainant withdrew her complaint.
Very good.
Great. Wonderful news. Any questions for the chief, board members?
No.
Nope.
Okay. Let's move on to item 14.2.
14.2 is a report dealing with positive comments from the public, and I would like to recognize 6 individual reports recognizing our officers: Constable McGuise, the Orangeville Police Services, Constable Lemke, Constable Taylor, Constable Brennan, Constable Ledet, and Sergeant Phillips, all for doing positive things within our community.
Great work.
Excellent.
Good.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions for the chief on 14.2?
Nope.
Okay. Chief, 14.3?
Thank you. This is a report on the resignation of Constable Ryan Schreier. Ryan Schreier was a member of the Orangeville Police Service, and he resigned on March 1st, 2020 to accept a position with the North Bay Police Service. The officer is just going back to his hometown, and we wish him all the success in his future endeavors. Thank you.
Great.
Great. Wish him well.
Great. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Chief. Appreciate that.
I'll make a motion to receive those reports, Chair Taylor.
I'll second it.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Item 10, there is no items for new business.
May I ask a question, though?
Okay. Yes, please, Member Rose.
I just wondered if there is an update or is there any information that can be shared about not just the COVID crisis, but how in some areas and municipalities and regions of Ontario, the opioid crisis has grown and has developed and is more serious than it was in the past. I'm wondering if we're seeing anything like that in Orangeville.
Member Brown, did you want to speak as mayor on that?
Mary, I don't know about the opioid crisis bump. Chief Kalinsky may, however. Chief?
Thank you. From time to time, we respond with medical to persons in crisis as a result of an overdose. We continue to assist those people, and I can tell you that our officers are continually being vigilant in regards to trafficking of narcotics in the town of Orangeville. We've made some recent arrests, and we've issued press releases in relation to that. Unfortunately, drugs are a concern in all communities, and we continue to deal with it along with our local paramedics and fire services in relation to any calls that we receive.
Thank you.
If I could, Chair Taylor, I just wanted to also follow up as
Yes,
a new
please.
business item. Chief Kalinsky and his staff have assisted residents on a street shall remain nameless, but over the past 2 to 3 weeks have worked to I guess arrest not in the terms of criminal arrest, but stop a drug den in Orangeville, and they've done a masterful job, and the landlord has been cooperative, and it looks like that particular group of individuals is now been displaced out of Orangeville. It's unfortunate. I'm hearing they've gone to Guelph, which you know, when these things happen, we don't wish that on anybody, but it's an ongoing battle, and I want to thank the chief and the staff very much for helping with that particular issue and incident. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, and we appreciate your help on this as well, Mayor.
Chief, it's Ian McSweeney. I just a follow-up question on that. So when that kind of thing happens and there's a known relocation of the individuals to a community, do you reach out to the police services in that community and just give them a heads up?
Our drug officers work in conjunction with many police services, and that forms part of the ongoing dialogue to update other communities in what's happening in our community and elsewhere. And we work together as a team to ensure that we do our best to eradicate whatever we possibly can.
Okay, so yeah, so they're not able to sort of evade the law by moving every 6 months, and I mean, not that they're doing that, but
absolutely not.
I mean, relocation out of our community doesn't really solve the wider Southern Ontario problem.
It's not.
Chair Taylor, Dwayne Sprague here from the ministry. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Dwayne.
Oh, good. Hi. Yeah, no, I just, through you, Chair, I just wanted to reach out and thank the chief and the deputy for all of the Y'all Chiefs. We've been inundated, as you can imagine, the chiefs around the province with Y'all Chiefs memos. And I think as of today, Chief, I've got them in a separate folder since COVID started. I believe we've got about 62 All Chiefs that we've released since COVID started. So between that and all the surveys and all the help from you in terms of filling out the surveys and everything else for the ministry, I just wanted to thank you very much for that. And kudos to the board for keeping things moving as well, because we've all been going through some challenging times. And just to let the board and the chief know, you know, as much as I've tried to push back on some of the surveys, a number of these have gone straight to the premier. And for whatever reasons, he's wanted his hands involved in them, and good on him, because it's helped out a fair bit. But it's literally, I know Premier Ford's had some involvement in some of this information. So thanks once again to the chief and the deputy for all this work.
Thank you.
It's excellent.
Thank you.
I apologize, Dwayne. I didn't realize that you were on the phone. I'm calling in myself, so I can't see the screen.
Yeah, no, I'm just calling. I got the call in as well, so I thought that was Microsoft Teams, but I just got the teleconference. That's fine. It worked out well.
Yeah, that's great. Is there anything else from your end? We're under the new business section. Is there things that you'd like to share with the board?
No, we're pretty well in the same holding pattern, I guess, as everybody else. All boards in Zone 5 and pretty much around the province, they're all doing what you folks are doing. They're either using Microsoft Teams, Zoom, 1 or 2 teleconferencing, and some using WebEx. But it's business as usual for now. Like I said, kudos to the 31s and even the 10s. They're still moving things forward. But as far as the ministry is concerned, no, we're really concentrating on all the All Chiefs related to COVID right now. And I know the Chief's probably aware that the DCT, the Basic Constable Training Program, starts up June 24th. I don't know, Chief. I suspect there's no officers from Orangeville obviously going in there.
No, do we not? Cool.
Yeah, but other than that, no, it's everything's just kind of moving forward, and I can give you a little bit of an update, which won't be much of an update. Probably the same update on the CSPA, the Community Safety and Policing Act. They have some fairly aggressive timelines attached to that. we're supposed to start working on that. I'm going to say very soon. Without giving a date, I know things were ramping up and looking to be ramped up as of July. And there was still an indication that proclamation of the CSPA would occur in 2021. I personally don't believe it will be January 2021, but I could be wrong. I would be hopeful if it was done by June of 2021. So for now, everything remains under the current Police Services Act, as I've always said at the last number of zone meetings. And I know they are going to try hard. They've got a lot of folks who are working on the CSPA, but there's a lot of work to do on the regulations. And I'm just having a difficult time believing that we can get everything done by the end of this year and get it proclaimed early in 2021, but I could be wrong.
Chair Taylor, I wonder if I could ask Mr. Sprague a question.
Yes, please.
Dwayne, we had correspondence from one of our rural police service boards, an OPP service board, and the concern out in the rural areas and the smaller municipalities under OPP policing is that there's going to be some consolidation of those boards. Can you comment on that? Do you have any insight into that?
Yes, the way it's written right now in the CSPA is there will be what's called a detachment model police services board. So you will, I mean, as it stands right now, and this could be changed because I believe the current wording in the new CSPA is somewhat flexible. And I know when I was covering the North for 3 years, I let folks know in Toronto that it was virtually impossible or going to be very difficult to have numerous boards reporting to one detachment when that detachment and the boards could be 3 or 4 hours away from each other. So I think there is some flexibility, but yes, to answer your question, it's a detachment-based model. So you would have numerous municipalities reporting to basically under that one detachment. And how that's going to look and the structure, I'm hearing numbers, I think in the PSA, the new PSA of 9 or 11 members on those boards. But I can send you some information on that if you like. But there has been some pushback, and I know some municipalities are not happy with that. So when we get finalized or get really ramped up with some of the regulations, that we'll probably know more in terms of how that's going to sort of pan out in an operational sense.
Right. Okay.
I'd appreciate the more information, Dwayne, if we could. That'd be great.
Okay. Sure.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, it's Ian McSweeney. Could I ask a question of Dwayne as well?
Yes, please.
Dwayne, it's Ian McSweeney. I understand that the way that Part 3 of the Police Services Act works in terms of our current board governance.
Yeah.
I must say, I mean, I haven't given it a thorough reading, but I am struggling a little bit to figure out how the Section 10 board governance works. Is it within an agreement, or is it somewhere outside the legislation that calls for the numbers and things and the powers and all of that stuff?
It's right in the current PSA. Absolutely. Even though you're going to flip over, transition from the 31 to a 10 board, the same rules and regulations apply. If you take a look at the PSA sections 27 to 40, they apply to you folks with the exception of section 31 and 39.
I see. Okay, so it's this, because the way that it uses board, it seems to be any board except as otherwise expressly carved out. Okay, well that makes perfect sense then. And the other one, the other thing that gave me pause when I looked at this document that we received from the smaller municipality dealing with governance is it seemed to state that Section 10 boards were limited to 3 members. I don't think that's correct.
No. You'll have 5 maximum, 3 members, 5 members, depending on the population, and that once again it coincides with sections 27 of the PSA.
Perfect. Thanks for that confirmation.
And the other thing to review, if you want, is obviously Section 10 in the
Yep.
TSA relates to, Section 10 boards.
Right. Okay, great. No, thanks. I was just missing that little connector. Thank you.
Yep, no problem.
That's excellent. Okay, Dwayne. Well, thank you very much. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate that.
Thanks, folks. Appreciate that, and look forward to joining again down the road.
No, it's great. Okay. Any other new business, board members?
No.
Okay. Hearing none,
No.
I guess we're on to a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Seconded by
Member Rose,
Brown.
thank you. Member Brown is seconded. All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. I'll work through the follow-ups that you've given me, and we'll be in touch over the next couple of weeks.
Great. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone. Enjoy your evening.
Have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.